Hey everybody, welcome. Today is, it's like June 2nd, I think. It's Thursday. I'm Jeremy Shoemaker, of course, your host, also known as Shoe Money. And looks like we got people trickling in here, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So today's topic is about branding. It's a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I'm a huge believer in branding. And I think it's very, very overlooked and gets overshadowed by kind of the new, latest, and greatest techniques in marketing like SEO and pay-per-click and all these fun buzzwords. But really, at the end, if you have a brand, when you fade out of the search engines and whatnot, you're still going to be there. So I met a young lady who's a fellow member of an entrepreneurial organization that I'm a part of. And we hit it off, and we started talking about branding, and just so happens that she has a agency out of Omaha, Nebraska. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce MJ McBride, my friend and brand evangelist. How are you doing, MJ?
Oh, I'm awesome. How are you?
I'm great. I'm glad you're here, and we're going to talk about branding. So maybe you could just kind of talk about how you got started with your business.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jeremy, I love it that you have your own personal brand going on, right? Shoe Money. It's awesome. I got started way back when as, I guess people would call me like a marketing guru. And one of the things that kind of always rubbed me the wrong way about marketing was it seemed like we were always trying to trick people. And then I started doing some business over in London. And in London, it was about 10 years ahead of where we were here, and everybody was talking about this cool thing called branding. And what was so unique about it was about really being as authentic as you could possibly be, and then bringing that to life. And really, that's what caught me, and that was what I just became very passionate about. And when I came back, I was looking at really honoring the entrepreneur and myself, and that was back in 1999. And that's when we said, all right, let's do this full-time for as many brands as possible. And that was when Rebel Interactive was born.
Awesome.
Here's a picture of our agency. This is down in Omaha on 13th Street. And so we're a full-service agency. And what we are all about really is bringing possibility to the planet via the work that we do with brands, webs, and videos. Here's our team. Are you guys seeing my little control panel or just
No,
slides?
I'm just seeing the slides.
All right. Right on. All right. So, Jeremy, who's your favorite Rebel already?
I would have to go with MJ and Caroline.
Right. Cool. Well, the Rebel partners are myself and Caroline and Andy and Brittany, and then we have a team of folks that work with us in their specialty areas. Everybody always asks us, so where'd the name Rebel come from? And the actual true answer is it comes from this collectible motorcycle that Caroline scored a long time ago, and it actually goes up in value because somebody ripped off a Harley Davidson design, and then they could no longer make it. So there's not too many of these Honda Rebels out there. But that's actually sitting in our agency and part of our environmental branding.
That's awesome.
And then everything that
I love where things come from. Like the whole Shoe Money thing comes from like I was cutting pizzas at 16 years old, and somebody said Shoe Money's on the cut table, and I was like, whoa. And that's where it came from.
Right.
So
yeah, awesome. Well, what I wanted to do with our, we've only got a little bit of time today, but I want to touch on, several branding things, and then really any questions or any things that you want me to comment on that are going to really be relevant to your audience is what I'm here to provide. So the first thing that people are always interested in is, so what do you mean by branding? So I ask, what is branding? Well, in my world as the brand evangelist, everything can be branded, everything. And so what I see as distinctions is there's corporate brands, right, all over the place. But then you can also look at communities as brands, and organizations and teams, and we do product and services branding development, and then even personal branding work. And then the question is why do folks brand? And so if you look at it, corporations are really out there to brand to be profitable, right? They're branding because they want to make a profit. Communities brand because they want to become a better destination. You know, the Big Apple is a destination brand. Organizations want to be more productive, teams want to be winners, and products and services want to be preferred over others. And then people want to brand because they want to get results, right? So the more people that know you as Shoe Money, the more intimate they are with you and with your brand, and the more results that you can get. So there's the game of branding is really about creating brand loyalty. And this one's normally, you know, like if we could hear people laugh, and it would be, this is the funny slide where, you know, how do you know your brand has really made it? And, you know, my answer is, it's like if people are going to tattoo Shoe Money on their arm, you probably made it pretty big.
We've actually had two, so it's not quite as big as Harley, but there's been two people who have unsolicitedly tattooed without payment or me soliciting them or anything. Just send me a photo and been like, hey, look at my tattoo. So if you search the blog for like tattoo or search Google for Shoe Money tattoo, you'll find them. One guy looks pretty crazy. One guy looks pretty cool. So
hey, that's perfect. You've got brand balance then, right?
There we go. There we go.
So then, all right. So then that's the segue to what the heck can you do with brand loyalty, right? So here's what Harley Davidson is all about. You know, they started out with being bicycles, moved into motorcycles. You know, today you can order a motorcycle without even looking at it and pay for it in advance. And then they went into motor clothes and merchandise and cafes, you know, and credit cards. So the whole idea is that once you have an established brand, once you invest enough time and energy into a brand and have people really authentically valuing it and creating loyalty around it, then you can expand with ease. So we look at brand loyalty in another way, and that is that the clearer your brand is, you know, like if you have a lot of people ask me, Jeremy, like, how important is color, you know, to my brand? Well, if you are out there representing your brand with, you know, like lots of reds, and then all of a sudden one day you're blues, you know, it's the confusion factor. It's like, are you fragmenting your brand, or are you building your brand? And so it really does matter how clear you are with how you're going to represent your brand, and we're going to talk about ways to do that later on. But I like to tell folks, I like to educate people on this fact that every single thing that you are doing internally and externally with your brand is either brand enhancing or brand damaging. So if you think about that for a minute, you know, any examples come to mind? Any thoughts on brand damaging? Any examples from the day?
From today?
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of one today. I know there was a Groupon thing. They just had a huge thing, but there's been, I mean, geez, there's been Facebook things. There's been a lot of different things.
It's like Jimmy John's, right? Their brand is all about freaky fast,
Mm-hmm.
and so when they're not, it's brand damaging, and it creates an exponential struggle for people, right? And if they continue on that path, it's an average results path. But what we really want to get to is the exponential results, where your brand is razor sharp and clear as can be, and you're being as brand enhancing as possible all the time. All right, so here's the question. So is branding just a name and a logo? Absolutely not. Most people believe that it's a name and a logo, or that those are the two most important things. It's really not so, because human beings are not wired that way. What we're wired for is experience. We want to experience everything that there is in life that we want to be drawn to or distracted from, or that we want to be loyal to. So I put this up here and I say, you know, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
BP.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, you know, they do bad stuff, and then people take it upon themselves, you know, to recreate their logos, right? And their brands.
Haven't people already forgotten about the bad stuff, though? I mean, isn't that...
Yeah,
like,
you know, they're working through it. Yeah, brands are always dynamic. Always, always, always dynamic. There's a couple of distinctions that we have. People get branding confused with marketing and with advertising. So I like to hit these points. So advertising is about placing ads. Marketing is about targeting markets. And then branding is about the total experience. So if we define branding, it's the dynamic promise and a delivery of an experience. And so why do I say dynamic? It's illustrated in the BP example, right? Or even more interesting, I remember, Tiger Woods being on top of the world one day and not so much the next.
Yep.
And with every single thing that we do and say, we have the opportunity to be brand enhancing or brand damaging. Image and identity. Jeremy, what's the difference between identity and image?
Wow.
Any guesses?
I'm gonna take a pass on that.
That's all right.
I mean, I can guess, but I don't think it'll be close. So.
That'll be close. Image is, well, it's easier to start with identity. So identity is, I'm MJ McBride. I'm the global brand evangelist. Okay? That's what I say about myself. My image is about what others say about me or what's exterior of myself, right? So brands have this dynamic where you have an identity where you are saying this is my brand, and then there is an image that goes along with that, and that's how others perceive you. Now the important thing is to have those two as closely related as possible so that they match up, so there's authenticity. So the clearer you are with your brand and the more authentic you are with your brand, like being your brand, like, Jimmy John's is not a fine dining experience, right? It's a freaky fast experience. The closer that they are to their identity with their image, the stronger the brand will be. Gotcha. Okay, any questions?
We actually only have we have one question asked 8 times, if you believe it or not. And it says, what does MJ stand for? Like, I don't really, you people, that's the only question you have. Okay.
I get that all the time, right? So I came out of the womb and I was branded, and the original brand was Monica Jean. Monica Jean is what it is.
Gotcha. Awesome. Yeah. There you go.
How brands work. Okay, now here's the power of branding. If you're not a believer yet, think about this. So if Coca-Cola was to lose all of its production-related assets in a disaster overnight, would they be able to rebuild? I say yes. They'd be able to rebuild. But if we all had amnesia overnight about their brand, would they be able to rebuild? And I'd say, wow, that would be a big undertaking. Like, the power of branding is exponential. The more you go, the wider you go, the more people understand and know you and are loyal to you, really the more extraordinary it is. It's awesome, because even a horrible disaster could actually, your brand could overcome it. But if people forget the power, or they forget your brand and have amnesia with it, wow. Return on branding investment. So what's the difference between the left and the right? They're both dirty bean water, right?
Yep.
But the difference is,
one tells a magnificent story and one just is plain.
Yeah. One is not a stand for the brand, right? They're just dirty bean water, whatever, 49 cents or 79 cents or whatever we are today. But then the other says, hey, I really want to have an X factor. I want to create something that is really valuable in people's minds, and I am going to invest in creating a brand and an experience. So really the difference is brand. People are more loyal to it and more willing to pay for it. I love this one. Somebody sent this to me the other day. It was awesome. When competitors notice that you've won, $4 is dumb. That's hilarious.
That is good.
Why? So why would people brand? Here are the most common answers. I have the opportunity to speak to thousands of people, and when I ask this question, why in the world would you bother branding? These are the most common answers, right? To be top of mind, to be known, to be unique, understood, and sustainable. And then the real deal is to create value and generate more of that loyalty and to be able to expand with ease. The other thing that I like to share with people is, it's really important not to just look at your brand externally, because it really is an internal and external strategic tool that you can run your business with or run your life with, really. And looking at internally, when you are hiring people, it is so critical to hire on brand. I work with a lot of folks who say, gosh, half of my company is a bunch of brand champions, and there's this handful of people that are just like almost the anti-brand. And we all know that is, it's critical in an environment, and it sucks the life out of productivity and results and innovation. So it's really important to look at internal behaviors and communications as well as external. So then the branding phenomenon, the thing that I really loved about working over in Europe and then coming back was that this whole notion of branding was really that brands are just like people. Jeremy, there's people that you're just really automatically drawn to.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's those people that you absolutely run from, right? You run the other way. You don't want to be stuck. Well, brands are exactly the same way. It's because as humans, we're wired for that experience, and we want what's real and genuine in our minds, and we're attracted to that, and we are drawn to that. And on the other side, we reject what we're not, what we think is phony and what we think is fake or manipulative. So there's a couple of different brand types that I want to go over. So there's real and genuines, and there's fake and phonies on the top and the bottom. And then there's declining brands, and then there's thriving brands. And so if we go to the thriving phony category, we call these the letdown brands. These are the ones that are they're typically way overpriced, and they don't deliver, right? They're the overpromising brands. They're the people who say that they can do anything, and then they never deliver. On the other side of the manipulative part of the spectrum, on the bottom half of this quadrant, are the losers. They're the failing brands that you'll only try when bribed. And, I love these examples because they're, it's fun to talk about. It's like, my mom is great about this. She's, she is the one that is the 2-for-1 special gal.
Mm-hmm.
And then she wonders why it doesn't work, Like, Mom, they're discounted for a reason. Mm-hmm. On the upper part of the quadrant, these are the charismatic brands. And these are the real and genuine ones, but they're not quite thriving yet. And we call those the maybe brands. These are the ones that have a lot of potential. They have, they can make it someday, as long as they stop discounting themselves. People are a lot, people are just like brands. And so most of the folks that we know have those days when, they're being a maybe brand. Their personal brand is a maybe. It's like, wow, I could really, go out there and do something great, but maybe it won't work out. That's kind of like what brands do. They discount their value. But where we want to be is the breakthrough category, which are the real and the thriving brands. These are the brands where no matter what they're doing, people say, what else do you have to offer? What else do you have to, what's next? How can I build my brand next? Here's another way to look at it. This is just from my personal, point of view. Everybody could map their own brands, their letdowns, their losers, their maybes, and their breakthrough brands. But for me, when I look at cars, it's like a breakthrough car for me is a BMW. I love them. I absolutely love them. I like how they drive. The Jaguars are expensive, and they went through this, period of time where they really had a lot of problems, and so that was a letdown for some of my friends that purchased those cars. And then the losers are the declining brands that are dropping out of the market, and then the maybe brands are the ones that have, some major issue that they're dealing with. And the point of all this is to know that the brands are always dynamic. Always dynamic.
Wasn't Jaguar even made by Ford now or something? Didn't they get by Ford?
Yeah.
So I mean,
it was a little.
That can't help. I don't think. I mean, with the branding, because
right.
Whenever I hear Jaguar, the first thing I think of is Ford. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's a repositioning in your mind when you hear that, right? So if we had the Ford brand up there, for some people, they are really, really stoked about their Ford, right? And it may be in a different category. I love to tell the story about my famous friend Jonna, and she is this awesome, amazing tattoo artist, and she, she just thinks it's crazy that I would buy a Ralph Lauren shirt ever. It's just crazy. It's like, no way. So for her, no matter what it does, it's a letdown brand for her. For me, I really like the fit of that shirt, and I'm willing to pay for it and appreciate it. But for her, it's a different story. So that's really the trick about branding, is knowing your audience and then being real and genuine to your brand that you're creating. Because if I were trying to be, if Rebel were trying to be a brand to some, like a brand that, just fits everybody, at the end, it would be a fragmented brand. And it would be a letdown and a loser brand to a lot of people, because it would not measure up to the ones that really appreciate what we're all about, which is bringing possibility to the planet. Here's another way to look at browsers. I thought those would be fun.
Nice. Yeah, especially the Internet Explorer.
I know. Oh my gosh, we could do a whole diagram on 6, 7, 8, 9.
Yeah.
Being your brand. Okay, so it's always about, so let's say that you know what your brand is all about. Then the game is really being your brand. It's and looking at it in terms of, if you want to generate loyalty, you want to be as real and genuine as you can. And the phony and manipulative brands, what they really do is they struggle, and they create a lot of resistance in the marketplace. And so the result of that is, if you are being real and genuine and have a lot of momentum, you're going to be powerful. And if you're real and genuine but you're stopped in some way, then you're going to have a potential. On the other side, on the bottom side, if you're stopped and you're phony, you're being passive. And if you're stopped and you're phony, or if you have a lot of momentum and you're phony, then you're going to be perceived as aggressive. All right. So here's some of the tools that we like to use. One of the things that you want to look at when you're developing a brand is, how can I create experiences in every way, shape, and form that human beings are going to experience it, right? So how do we experience brands? We experience them through our senses, and so that's why, as branding strategists, what we want to do is create experiences. So we want people to see the brand, obviously. So that's the look and the feel. And we want them to feel the brand, be able to touch it. What's the texture of it? How does it feel? There's a smell and a sound and taste that goes along with brands too. So people will ask me, so I'm not Coca-Cola. I don't have a taste. But you really do. Sometimes it's vodka, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you really do have the opportunity to create an appeal with all of the senses, because to the extent that you do that, people will get more and more attached to your brand. Here's another tool. We call it the brand platform. So if you want to look at your brand and develop your brand based on answering some questions, you can say, what's the brand essence? What's the reason for my brand? What's the reason for being? What are the principles that are going to guide us? And what are the facts? What's the real truth about my brand? What is it that other people can't deliver? What's the brand appeal? Why will our customers choose us over other people? And then really telling the truth about what's the brand weakness and where we can grow. And then looking at all those combined factors and putting together a big idea that will communicate to the audience that you want to hook. Another tool that we use, and this is our favorite tool, because it really has a lot to do with the concept that brands are just like people. So there's people's passions. If you look at a company, there are people there, human beings, that are really the biggest champions for your brand. And they're passionate about something. There's a collective passion, and if you can determine what that is, then it can be part of your brand soul that comes to life. And then the culture is really about, what are the things that we're going to value as a company, and then the future is about what is the vision that we're living into. A couple of things to note on these. If you have these three equal parts, like in harmony with each other, then what we see is that the brand is more authentic, and it has the opportunity to become a breakthrough brand as the company brings the brand to life. But if you guys are out of whack in any way, like for example, remember brands are like people?
Mm-hmm.
Jeremy, if you think about some people you know, relationship-wise, you know, like what's it like to be in a relationship with somebody that has a lot of vision and solid values, but absolutely no passion? You know, it's a letdown. It's a loser brand scenario. It's heavy. So, and then there's people who have a lot of vision, but they don't have a lot of values or passion, and it's a letdown. And then there's the folks that have lots of passion and a lot of values, but absolutely no idea where they're going in the future. And so those are the maybe brands. So to be rock solid, what we want to create is an understanding of what are my people passionate about, what are the values of the culture, and where are we going in the future. There's another way to look at it. The brand passions, the people, you know. What's the thing that we have in common? What are we passionate about? And what do we really want? And these are like, this is like a younger voice. It's like looking at the psychology of a brand, right? Or the psychology of a company. And then looking at the values, you know, what is the culture really valuing, and what are those beliefs that you will, you know, live by no matter what? What are those collective values? And then the vision is looking out 3 years or so and saying, what is the competitive advantage that I'm going to have over people? Really looking at what is my sustainable stand? What's the vision? What are we going after? So when you put those together, for my company, this is, you know, this is what our team says today. You know, our people, we're passionate about what's possible. We're valuing exponential results and bringing brands to life. And the future that we're looking at is bringing possibility to the planet via brands, webs, and videos. And so when we sum all that up, what we go out to the world with is brand and interact and profit. Cool. I wanted to touch on one more thing about personal branding, which is really exciting for the entrepreneurs out there. You know, you have an opportunity to continue to develop your brand. You know, Shoe Money is an awesome personal brand. For me, it's the brand evangelist. And the way that I got to that was by really looking at this for myself and saying, you know, me personally, like, what was I passionate about when I was a kid? And a lot of people laugh when they hear this, but it's like I wanted to be center stage, you know, and so there's no mistake that I do have an opportunity to speak to a lot of people, and I, you know, enjoy being in the limelight as much as I can. And then values, my dad, he always told me to, you know, be a witness for what I believe in, and that was really a value that, you know, it was just always there as a young adult. And so I really do value being a witness for what I believe in. But then my vision is all about inspiring people to live lives that they love, and I enjoy doing that through personal branding work and real, you know, personal empowerment. So I always like to leave people with, you know, branding is everywhere, whether you're a corporation, an organization, a team, an individual. Everybody experiences brands all day long. And so why not bring your own brand to life and be your authentic brand and share it, and then enlist people to be brand champions for what all the results that you want to create in life. And that's what I got.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Any other?
We have questions. Thanks so much for that. That was great. You know, a huge one. Okay, we already got the what does MJ stand for with that, so we can get that out of the way. One person said, you know, these famous brands like Harley Davidson and Coca-Cola are built with millions of dollars in advertising.
Yeah.
How do we individual entrepreneurs build this brand?
Awesome question. And you know what? I will actually put a slide out on our website. If you go to rebel-interactive.com/brand-matters, I'll put it out there, and it's called a brand agenda. And it's really amazing because it's the thing that everything that you do internally and externally, all your behaviors and communications, what we want to do is make them as brand enhancing as possible. And so, like, I like the Tom Shoe example, right? Because, what they did is they said, hey, we're going to use other ways to get our marketing message out. And really what they're doing is using their brand in a very powerful way. Let other people do, spread the word for them. And in the external communications quadrant, that's all the stuff that you like spend marketing dollars on. What we're saying with our branding technology is that you can look in all four quadrants. Like, how are you incenting your employees? How are you, how are you dealing with your vendors? How are you doing X, Y, and Z to build your brand that does not rely on dollars? So there's ways to do that, and it's just that companies that have money are going to spend money, and companies that don't have money are not going to spend money, but the brand is still going to be essential for the growth and the loyalty related to both of those different concepts.
Awesome. Another person asked, a lot of people start their websites with their name. There's a friend of mine named John Chow who has johnchow.com, but it's actually become like a huge business. At what point should somebody switch away from their name to choose some sort of a brand?
I'll bet that is an awesome question too. There's lots of different answers to that question, and I would be, super willing and actually look forward to actually having a conversation with that person, because every scenario is going to be different. Let me touch on a couple. So, like, one scenario is mjmcbride.com, right? So when I'm doing personal branding, I'm really interested in developing my own brand. But when I'm doing company branding and team and organizational branding, it's really about the team that I've created at Rebel Interactive. And so I think that there's always going to be a place for both. But at the end of the day, for me, when I started out, my personal brand was more important to me. And now today, it's much more important to me to promote my company brand because of the culture that we're creating and moving possibility forward on the planet. I can only do it so much myself at a time, but when my whole team is engaged in it and I'm building that brand, I think I'm going to accomplish what I want to accomplish faster. So it really is an individual, it's a case-by-case scenario.
Awesome. And let's see, one of these questions, I definitely have an answer for this one, but it says, will I dilute my brand by marketing ClickBank products? I don't know if you're familiar with ClickBank, but it's kind of like a sketchy marketplace where people can throw ebooks on there and stuff like that.
Uh-huh. Well, it's interesting. It's like I would encourage people to look at how can you do it most authentically. So, like, for example, if you wanted to have a really naughty brand, right?
Right.
you would want to go after being as naughty as you could possibly be, right?
Right.
Because that would be authentic to that brand. But if not, then you don't want to dilute your brand with naughty and nice, unless that's exactly what you're going after. I believe that wherever you put your attention, wherever your brand is really going with momentum, you want it to be in a way that you are prepared to handle and it doesn't become a burden. So if you like the game of doing that, then be the best at it. And if you don't, then I would say do something else.
I would just add to that a little bit that, there's some things in ClickBank that aren't super sketchy. Most of them are, but like MJ kind of talks about, it's you're either hurting or helping your brand at any time. There's no kind of like just idle. And so I think that, I know with my brand, and sometimes, I will do a promotion or something and later regret it. Not because it was really bad, but maybe I got some bad feedback from someone and or whatever. But there's always,
Mhm.
there's always a price. I mean, sometimes I introduce somebody and everyone gets a giant value out of it. Sometimes I introduce them and, they get they have an opt-in thing and then they sell the data or something and then all these people are getting spammed and I feel like a jerk. So I think, it just comes with experience. And, you can, with the ClickBank marketplace, I probably would say, unless it's a nationally recognized brand, I'd be very careful about marketing things. Or, if the site is just a naughty site and you don't care, like MJ talked about, then, whatever. But if it's your personal face and name, then,
Mhm.
might not want to tie into that too much.
I always want to be really careful of, what my brand is associated with because it really does matter. I mean, it really, really does matter. Just like your example, Jeremy, earlier, when I put up Jaguar and you said, I think of Ford immediately. Well, people are going to think of your brand, whatever is the last thing on the top of their mind, and associate that forward. So, it is a monumental task to build a brand and to do it well. And it's like you want to make sure that every single thing you do and say is as brand enhancing as possible. And if it's not, you're really defeating yourself and you're really fragmenting the brand. You're competing with yourself.
Mm-hmm. I had a guy on a webinar or a call not too long ago named Seth Godin, who's he's an author and writes a lot of marketing books. And he said
Yeah.
he said something really interesting. And he said that if someone was walking around with a shirt on that had your brand on it, and then someone ran up to him and said, "I know that company. It did this," and it's like, what would you want them to say? And
Mm-hmm.
and so I thought that was really interesting and true. And it's like, like 30 people have responded here and said that since they bought Ford, but then they sold it a couple years ago. So, or I mean, I'm sorry, they bought Jaguar, Ford did, and then they sold it a couple years ago. They no longer own it. But in my mind, I just have stuck on that, and I don't know why, but it's too bad because Jaguar at one time was such a prestigious brand. And
Mm-hmm.
it just, with the Ford thing and whoever owns them now, it just seems like, it could be made at the same factory, for all we know, but we come up with these stories in our heads for these brands. And I think that's, for me, like from a marketing perspective, a bigger thing with branding is more about the story behind your brand. When people see it, what do you want them to say? And how do you create and
Mm-hmm.
mold that story?
Absolutely. And how do you do it in such a way that you don't get tired of your own brand? That's what's really exciting is when you can dig deep and really understand what are the people that I'm hanging out with at this company, or what am I creating as a company that the people are passionate about, and what's the culture, and what's it look like, touch, feel like, smell like, taste like, what's the sense about it, what's the environment, and really be true about it. It never gets old, and it always is an exciting new chapter. Every day is a new opportunity to create possibility and to leave your mark in the world. And that's what I really encourage the entrepreneurs that work with us to look at is if you're going to bother having a company and doing, building a brand, then build it in the direction that you are excited about. Like that, at the end of the day, will always carry a brand forward.
Yeah, that's great. Great advice.
I remember, I
And
remember when Caroline and I were starting Rebel, we were looking at, what are we going to call this company? And, so of course, we had all these ideas, McBride, Wilson Associates, McBride Partners, whatever. And, then we said, hey, we're a branding company, and shouldn't we practice what we preach? And, so we're asking our friends and our family, what do you think of, ABC agency versus Rebel Interactive? And everybody was like, oh man, you'll never be taken seriously as Rebel Interactive. And we're like, uh-oh, that's the way we gotta go.
yeah.
Because that's the one with the story, right? It's, it maybe back when we started it, it was about Caroline and I creating an agency, but day, it's so much bigger than that, and it would be inauthentic to, to not be the rebels that we are.
I think one other thing I was thinking of, which I just kind of escaped my mind, I think, but it'll come back to me. But I think the whole branding thing, I do believe has escaped. It's really lost. It's kind of, everyone always comes back to it. Oh, here's what it was: is people want to know what a branding agency normally charges, and who at what point in a person's business should they look at consulting with a branding agency.
Oh, awesome. Of course you can answer the question in a million ways, but if you are starting something new, you should start with your brand, because everything is built around it. I mean, absolutely everything. If you want to have an exponential result, like really the quickest way to people's hearts and minds is to present a brand, because that's how we are wired to experience and consume things. And if you don't do that, then it's kind of like the difference between, if you've got a Coca-Cola, can of Coca-Cola, and you've got a can of generic cola next to each other. People are going to naturally be more understanding or more drawn to something that's packaged. And so if you're starting out, I would say absolutely start with a brand. The other folks that we work with a lot are folks who are in crisis or they've plateaued. So they're they're like, I've been in the market for 10 years, I've got a brand, or I've been in the market for 3 years and I've got a brand and it's doing fine, but I can't push through. I can't get to the next level in my business. And I'm starting to think that I've done everything I can except really look at the branding that's going on. And we can make a big impact there because it really is that tuning of the dials. Like, the whole structure of your company is already working, but if the brand is not appealing or attracting the people who are going to value your brand most, then you're missing out on all of that exponential result that is available through branding. And in terms of pricing, there's lots of ways to do it. Some companies will work with you in terms of anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000, and then say, hey, I want to do revenue sharing with you because I'm building this brand with you, and I'd like to have residuals for the rest of my life based on the brand that we do. There's that way, and then there's also package deals that are in the $1,000 to $10,000 range. But then the ones that I think do the most value are the ones who really understand that bringing your brand to life is an ongoing thing. So you develop a brand strategy and then everything that goes with it. So you've got a brand strategy, and then you say, what does that brand strategy look like? What is it going to look like in terms of my print material, my online material, my internal, environmental branding, and then continue to bring that to life over time, because we know that things change. What we want the brand to tell a story over time. The Harley-Davidson story goes on, and so does Coca-Cola. Well, it can do the same thing for a little startup company also. In fact, it tells the story so well that they can see exponential results without having the burden of having to advertise. It's like their people are their brand champions if they do it right. Their community is their brand champion if they do it right. Even their vendors and their competitors can actually play in bringing their brand to life.
And one little thing about branding I just like to share is I created a mobile community years and years ago, and it most of my listeners and readers are familiar with it. It's called Next Pimp, like pimp out your next phone kind of thing. And I kind of just made it just as a fun little thing, but it was like, and it's kind of funny, like the nextpimp.com domain is weird, but I actually played around with some stuff I shouldn't have with search engine optimization stuff, and I got the entire site banned out of Google. And this is a site I was doing 6 figures a month, but to my surprise, I maintained 95% of my revenue because the people who were actually quality people were actually bookmarking the site, coming back to it, and actually remembered the name nextpimp.com, Whereas if it was just like free ringtones or something like that, you know, I don't think that people would have stuck with it or come back to it or remembered it. But because we specifically branded it out and stuck out, kind of like the Coca-Cola thing, I lost everything when I thought I lost everything when I was completely taken out of Google, because that's where everyone found me. But then it was just all word of mouth, and you know, and then I discovered actually that with a good brand, you don't need Google. And another really great example of that is my friends who started a site called I Can Ask Cheeseburger, which nobody can even freaking spell it. It's like ICANHHAZ cheese. You know, I mean, like, it's nuts. And they don't care anything about search engine traffic. But this site, you know, it does like 600,000 visitors a day, unique visitors a day, and it's just stupid cat pictures, which they're actually kind of funny if you read them. But I mean, it's really, really funny. And when my friend was working on this site, and I talk to him every once in a while, and they just put out a book about it, and it's been on the New York Times bestseller like since it came out. It's so funny. But it's just a site about, you know, pictures of cats and stuff like that. But it's just amazing that they built this brand and it's all word of mouth. They don't care at all about search engine traffic. They don't care at all about pay-per-click. And so you hear so many of these gurus and experts who make money online nowadays talking about, oh, the new thing is YouTube, and the new thing is this, and the new thing is this. But when you really, really look at anything successful, it all comes back to a great brand and a great story behind that brand, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's because, you know, we have to be able to remember it. And I don't know about you, but the older I get, the harder that is. Branding is a big help, right? It helps us remember things. It's like a good picture, you know, a good photograph. It takes you back in time. A brand is something that will that has emotion and relevance, and you know, it's an experience when you are introduced to it for the first time, and then when you consume it over time, however that is, and then being reintroduced to it is like, you know, being right back in there, right next to it again.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people also asking if this will be the slides will be archived and stuff. I'll actually send out. I'll post a replay of this. I apologize. During I was recording my screen. A couple windows popped up here and there, but it was just other people messaging me and whatnot, so it shouldn't be hopefully too annoying. But for those watching the replay, sorry about that. But yeah, so we'll definitely record this. Branding is a huge thing that I'm a big advocate of, and I'm really grateful that MJ could join us. And I'm even more proud that she's from Omaha, Nebraska. Represent.
Woohoo! Absolutely. And if anybody's interested in going to our website too, there, you know, I'm constantly doing updates on different categories of branding topics.
Yeah, and that is at rebel-interactive.com. And so you can always find MJ there if you have questions or whatever, or need to hire an agency for branding or consulting or whatever. Go talk to MJ. Because we don't have all that stupid overhead of living in like LA or New York and all that stuff. So
exactly, right.
You can come
right.
fly into Omaha, maybe around the College World Series time. It's coming up here. There you go.
Exactly. Support your favorite college brand and team, and hang out with the Rebels.
There you go. All right, everybody. Well, that pretty much covers it for this webinar. I was going to say this week's webinar, but we've kind of been doing them like every other week. So I'd like to thank MJ so much for coming and putting on a great presentation. And as always, you know, you can find me at shoemite.com. MJ, again, is at rebel-interactive.com. So go light up her site. And thanks again, MJ, and thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
The organizer has ended the session, and this call